Chapters 5 and 6 of Her Mother's Secret by E.D.E.N. Southworth. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5 Greenbushes. Glad voices broke in upon Anglesea's brooding. He looked up, and saw coming toward him the three young daughters of the house, Odalite, Wynnette, and Elva, attended by their governess, Miss Meeke. They were all equipped in their warm, brown cloth coats, buttoned up before, and their brown beaver poke bonnets tied under their chins. They carried little baskets in their hands, and dragged along sticks after them. "Will you take a walk with us through the woods this morning, Colonel Anglesea? Father has gone into town to attend court, you know, and mother has a little headache, and has locked herself up in her room to lie down and sleep. And we are going for a walk. Will you go?" inquired Odalite, as graciously as she could force herself to do, for the girl secretly detested the interloper, though her native good breeding prevented her from ever betraying her feelings to their object. She had not failed to perceive, through her own fine sympathies rather than through any expression from Mrs. Force, that the lady was very much annoyed and distressed by the presence of this intruder into the privacy of her domestic circle, and so Odalite often quietly relieved her mother by taking charge of the visitor's entertainment, as she did on this occasion by inviting him to join their walking party. Colonel Anglesea looked at her with an amused smile, yet with more attention than he had ever regarded her before. "Will you come with us?" she inquired again, seeing that he hesitated to reply. "Thanks, very much. It is a temptation, Miss Force. In what direction do you propose to walk?" "Down the hill to the shore, then along the shore for 3 miles to Greenbushes," replied the young lady. "And then through the house, which is to be Le's and Odalite's home after New Year, when they are married," volunteered Wynnette, a pretty, saucy little brunette of 14 years. "Wynnette! Wynnette! Hush!" exclaimed Odalite, blushing vividly. "Why must I hush? Everybody knows Le is coming home to marry you at Christmas," retorted the second sister. "And what do you think, Colonel Anglesea?" whispered Elva, a gentle little blonde of 12. "What, my elf?" playfully inquired the colonel. "Why, when Le and Odalite get married and go to live at Greenbushes, Wynnette and I will live there just as much as we shall live at home here." "Indeed! And what will Mr. Brother in law say to that?" "Who, Le? Why, Le will say he is very glad. Le loves us all dearly. Le would give us anything we want, or do anything in the world for us. Especially now, I should think he would, when we are going to let him have our sister and take her away." "Elva, my dear, you are talking too much," whispered Miss Meeke, a small, demure young woman, with a pale face, gray eyes, and smooth, brown hair. "Why? When he wants to pretend that our Le will not be glad to have us all three to live with him? I must take Le's part, you know, Miss Meeke, especially in his absence," pleaded Elva. "Shall we walk on, Colonel Anglesea?" suggested Odalite, to put an end to an embarrassing conversation. "Certainly, if you please. What are these sticks for?" inquired the colonel, referring to the wands the girls dragged behind them. "Oh, these are to thresh the chincapin bushes when we get there, and we expect to fill our baskets," answered Wynnette. "Can I not carry them for you?" he inquired, and, without waiting for an answer, collected the sticks from the children, who not unwillingly gave them up. "And now I think of it," suggested the colonel, "you will require but one stick, that I will use and thresh the bushes while you gather the nuts. See, I will leave these 3 here, and take this thickest one. Now give me the 4 baskets. I will hang them on my stick and sling them over my shoulder, thus," he said, suiting the action to the word. The 2 children laughed at the figure he cut. "Now, right face, forward, march!" he cried, stepping out in front. They left the lawn by the east gate and passed through an orchard where a few late winter apples still clung to the nearly leafless branches of the trees, opened another gate, and entered a narrow path leading down through the thick woods to the shore. Then they turned southward and walked by the side of the bay, the children chattering as they went. "What do you think, Colonel Anglesea?" inquired Elva. "I don't know. What ought I to think?" laughingly inquired their escort. "Well, I'll tell you. Although Greenbushes is only 3 miles off, we have never seen it in our lives." "Really, now?" "No, never. Miss Notley, Le's great aunt, who owned the place, and who left it to Le in her will, never lived here at all. She left the place in the care of old Mr. Beever, her overseer, and he and the negroes worked the land and raised the crops, and Mr. Copp, her lawyer, attended to the sale and shipping of the tobacco, and all that, you know." "I see." "And Miss Notley lived on her other place down in Florida. At least, she lived there all the year round, except the summer months, when she always went to Europe. She died in Florida, and left Felicia, her estate there, to her Florida relations." "Ah," said the colonel, trying to seem interested, while really brooding over his own schemes. "And she left Greenbushes to Le, who is the only relative by her mother's side." "Quite so. And it is a great thing for Le and Odalite, for now they can marry and settle at once." "Precisely." "And as Wynnette and I shall spend half our time at Greenbushes, we mean to pick out our room and choose the paper and furniture for it." "In—deed!" "Oh, yes. Mr. Copp sent to New York and got illustrated catalogues from the furniture dealers and books of patterns from the paper hangers, and samples from the what do you call them, Wynnette? The people who color the walls that are not papered, you know." "The kalsominers?" "Yes, that is what I mean. And all sorts of things, and we are going to choose our room and have it fixed." "Without consulting Mr. Brother in law?" "Of course. Why, it is all to be done at once. At once. It is to be completed and quite ready by the time Le gets home. Won't that be jolly? Le wrote to Odalite to do just as she pleased with the house, and wrote to Mr. Copp to advance all the money that was necessary, and give her all the advice and assistance that he could. So father wrote to Mr. Copp to meet us here to day, and he is to do it. Father would have been here, too, but he was subpoenaed this very morning to attend court. Oh, do look at that flock of wild geese, colonel! I'm glad you haven't got your gun and dogs this time." So chattering, and letting their tongues run before their wit, the children, with their companions, reached Greenbushes, and turning from the shore began to ascend the hill going toward the house, which stood on the summit a few hundred yards back from the bay, and in the midst of a grove of pines, cedars, yews, firs, and every description of evergreens that would grow on the soil, so that winter as well as summer the mansion was sheltered, and the lawn was heavily shaded by a canopy of green trees, hence its name of Greenbushes, given when these same trees were but saplings. The house, in the midst of this evergreen grove, was a building of hard, dark, red bricks, and so irregular in construction as to defy all description. It had so many gabled ends, tall chimneys, little dormer windows, and latticed windows, as to confuse the spectator, and so many great doors, each with its own portico, as to make a strange visitor utterly uncertain concerning the whereabouts of the main entrance. Two old men, standing on a three-cornered portico in an angle of the wall, drew the steps of the visitors thither, where they were met by Mr. Copp, a tall, thin, fair-faced, gray-haired lawyer, and Mr. Beever, a short, round, red-faced, and bald-headed farmer. Both were plainly dressed in business suits of heavy black cloth. "Do you know those persons?" inquired the colonel of Odalite. "No, but I know who they are, and I have come to see them." "Then let me speak to them first," he suggested, going up to the two men. He addressed them in a low tone, and then brought them to the spot where Odalite and her companions waited. "Miss Force," he said, "this is Mr. Copp, legal steward of the late Miss Laura Notley. This is Mr. Beever, manager of the plantation. They wish to speak to you on business, and will show you into the house," he said. The two men bowed very deferentially. Odalite received them politely, and at Mr. Copp's invitation followed them into the building, accompanied by her sisters, their governess, and Col. Anglesea, who regarded all these proceedings with a sarcastic smile. The lawyer led the whole party into a small, old fashioned, oak paneled parlor, with a chimney in the angle of the wall, in which a large wood fire had been kindled, and near which a table and a few chairs had been placed. On this table lay various books of samples and patterns, and catalogues of prices. "Will you sit down and look over these, or will you go through the house first? I have had fires built in all the rooms, but still I think the place is not thoroughly aired and dried yet," said Mr. Copp. "We will look over these first, and then take them through the house for reference," replied Odalite. And the whole party sat down around the table and began to examine patterns, samples, and prices. A great chattering, as of many magpies, ensued. There was a difference of opinion. for calcimine, and for the groundwork of wall paper, as well as for window curtains, and chair and sofa colors, Odalite and Miss Meeke preferred olive, sage, lavender, and other delicate, neutral tints, while Wynnette and Elva loudly advocated pink, blue, and yellow, or crimson, purple, and orange. At length, without arriving at any mutual understanding, but being rested from their long walk, they all arose to go through the house. Such a rambling house! With stairs going up and stairs going down in such out of the way places, doors opening into rooms in such unexpected quarters. When they thought they were going to look into a small closet they found a large chamber, and when they walked through a side passage, which they thought led outdoors on a porch, behold, it led into some wing, containing more rooms. Wynnette and Elva chose at least half a dozen different rooms in succession. This because it had such a lovely little fireplace and mantelpiece; that because it had such funny little cupboards; the other because it had such quaint little windows. Finally they gave up in despair, saying they must think it over at home before they could choose among so many. Odalite, who thought that there was no time to lose if the house was to be ready for Leonidas on his return, selected the wall paper and the suits of furniture for all the rooms from the patterns before her, and having carefully marked them and written her directions, she requested Mr. Copp to set the mechanics to work at once, and to hurry on the repairs as fast as justice to the business would permit. And Col. Anglesea, watching these proceedings, smiled sarcastically. Having done their errand at Greenbushes, the little party left the house. "Mr. Beever, oh, please, where are the big chincapin thickets we have heard so much about?" inquired Elva, in whose ideas these nuts were, after all, the most immediately important item in their errand to the farm. "Yes, honey, you'll find 'em all along both sides of the footpath through the woods betwixt here and your place, but 'specially where you cross Chincapin Creek." "The woods! There! We'll have to go back that way. Ah, Col. Anglesea, how lovely it will be when Odalite and Leonidas live here! There are so many lovely ways of going between the two places. Just listen, now, while I tell you. We may walk by the shore, as we did this morning, or we may walk through the woods, as we shall this afternoon. We may ride horseback along the shore, or through the woods, or we may drive in a carriage along the shore, or along the turnpike road through the woods. Or, best of all, we may row in a boat from the landing at the foot of our hill to the landing at the foot of this hill. Oh, it will be perfectly delightful!" Col. Anglesea looked at the child with his sinister smile, but she was too happy to notice anything evil in it. They took leave of the lawyer and the farmer, and started to walk home through the woods, chattering all the way of the beauty of Greenbushes even now, and the delight of the prospect ahead. "It is too late this season; but mind, Odalite, next spring you are to have a mansard roof, and bay windows, and balconies, and towers, and things," said Elva. "Perhaps," quietly replied Odalite. "Why, there is no 'perhaps' about it. Le said you were to do just as you please with the house," suggested Wynnette. "But that did not mean I should burn it down," said Odalite. "Of course it did not. What do you And he did not mean I should tear it down, either, as I should have to do to make all the improvements our ambitious little Elva suggests. Why, darling, we might as well talk of putting a mansard on top of that clump of Scotch firs as on that irregularly built farmhouse." "The top is about as uneven in height as a set of dinner casters, so we will give up on the mansard roof. But do have a bay window and some balconies," said Elva. "Perhaps," repeated Odalite. So talking, they reached the bridge crossing Chincapin Creek, with its fringe of richly laden bushes, and stopped to gather the nuts. It took but a little while to fill all their baskets, after which they continued their homeward walk. They reached Mondreer late in the afternoon. Their father had returned from the courthouse, their mother had recovered from her headache, and the delayed dinner was served. During the meal, which at Mondreer was always a merry one, the talk still ran upon Greenbushes and its present and prospective attractions. Col. Anglesea took little part in the conversation, but he listened and smiled. After dinner, and during the long winter evening that followed, he vainly sought an opportunity of speaking alone with Mrs. Force. He did not fail because she shunned him, but because the little party kept together in the most persistent way, and he certainly could not ask Mrs. Force in the presence of all her family to give him a private interview. He must wait his opportunity. CHAPTER VI. In my lady's chamber. The next morning Colonel Anglesea resolved to have a decisive conversation with Mrs. Force before the day should be over. After breakfast he seated himself in the family parlor to await events. Soon Mr. Force came in to him. He was booted and spurred for a ride. "I am sorry to have to leave you again to day, but you know a subpoena is not a thing to be defied," he said. "Oh, don't mind me. Sorry to lose your company, but shall find something to do, no doubt," replied the colonel. "I fear it would be quite useless to ask you to ride with me." "To court? To spend the day there? Yes, quite. I never permit myself to be bored if I can help it." "Good day, then." "Good day. I wish you a pleasant ride." "Thank you," said Mr. Force, and he left the room. Anglesea kept his seat, and waited for the entrance of Mrs. Force. There was her workstand, her workbox, her easy chair, and her footstool, in their cozy corner between the open fire and the side window; but she did not come to occupy them. He knew at length that she was voluntarily absenting herself in order to avoid a tête à tête with him, to which, if she should come into the sitting room at this time of day, she would be obliged to subject herself; for at this hour all the children were in the schoolroom with their governess, and Odalite with them, helping their German lesson. As soon as Col. Anglesea divined the reason of Mrs. Force's absence, he resolved to lay a trap for her and catch her. So he went out into the hall, loudly calling on one of the men servants to saddle a horse for him, saying he was going to ride to the post office, made a great fuss putting on his overcoat, cap, and gloves, and finally, when the horse was brought around to the door, threw himself into the saddle and galloped away with so much clatter and bang that the lady, wherever she might be lurking, could not fail to hear and know he had left the house. And she did not fail to hear and know it, but she was so astonished at the unusual noise and confusion he made that she asked herself a question which she would not have asked another: "Is the man intoxicated at this early hour of the morning, that he behaves in this very disorderly manner? Well, I am glad he is gone. I hope it is for all day." So saying, she went downstairs to the sitting room, feeling secure against his intrusion. She took up her work, a piece of silk embroidery, and began to trace the outline of the pattern, humming a little air to herself. Less than half an hour had the lady sat at her needlework when the door opened softly. She heard the slight sound through the silence of the house, looked up, and saw Col. Anglesea enter the room and walk toward her. She started as if she had seen an apparition, and impulsively exclaimed: "I thought you were miles away! I thought you had gone out for the day!" "You heard me gallop off? Doubtless. I took a brisk ride along the turnpike as far as Chincapin Creek, turned down its banks to the shore, cantered along until I reached the bridle path leading up to your stables, and then dismounted, leaving my horse with the groom, and walked to the house. It was a brisk run, but it has done me good," Col. Anglesea explained, as, uninvited, he drew a chair toward the fire and seated himself at Mrs. Force's work table, facing her. The lady gave her attention to the pattern of her embroidery, and made no reply. "If you had foreseen my quick return, certainly; if you had foreseen my errand, I should not have found you here. You would have kept out of my way, and even if I had sent a message requesting to speak with you, you would have made some excuse to decline or to defer the interview." "Perhaps I should. Why do you intrude upon my privacy, Col. Anglesea? What is it that you want now?" she inquired, with that blending of fear and defiance in her tone and manner which fatally betrayed the weakness of her defenses. "Friday, I wonder that you should dare to assume such airs toward me, a man who with one word could destroy you," he answered. "Knave and coward that you are! Brute and demon as you are! You will not speak that word here!" she muttered, intensely, under her breath, as she fixed her blazing blue eyes upon him. "There you go with your extravagant compliments again! You always were such a fascinating flatterer, Friday," said the man, coolly taking up one of her spools of silk and unwinding and rewinding it. "But as to that one word, I certainly shall whisper it into Abel Force's ear, and also into the ears of that many-headed, mighty magician, known to us all as 'our reporter,' when he shall come to me, notebook and lead pencil in hand, to interview me, and hear all the particulars, after the explosion shall be over." "And do you presume to suppose that you will be suffered to live after that?" demanded the lady. "Possibly not, in which case somebody else would have to be interviewed. But that would not help your cause. Come, Friday, the only possible salvation for you will be your full agreement to my terms of silence." "Oh, you unmitigated villain!" "Quite so. I am no halfway weakling, as you know perfectly well, for there are no secrets between us, Friday. You know, and therefore I need not remind you, that I never stop at any means to gain an end. I have an end in view just now. It is the price of my silence." "I wonder what new felonies you can possibly be meditating now?" bitterly demanded the lady, in spite of her fears. "What new? What was the word?" "Felonies, you ruthless fiend!" "Ah, certainly, thanks. You are too good to say so. Ah, the enterprise I have in hand just now is one in which you will promptly and zealously give me all the help you possibly can such effectual assistance, in point of fact, as shall insure its success." "And if I do not?" "If you do not? I have already told you the consequences. But you are slow to believe them. You do not really believe me to be so thoroughgoing as you have been good enough to say that I am. You think that at the last there will be some relenting on my part. Disabuse yourself of that illusion, Friday. Listen to me. No condemned criminal standing on the trap door of a scaffold ever occupied a more dangerous position than you do now. Refuse to cooperate with me in my purpose, and I give the signal that seals your fate. I spring the trap that lets you drop at once into perdition. That is all, my lady." "And yet," groaned Elfrida Force, clasping her hands convulsively together, "and yet neither I nor any one related to me have ever broken any law of the land, or have ever been accused or even suspected of breaking one." "That should be a most precious and comforting reflection, Friday, especially if I should be obliged to spring that trap. Many unhappy victims have met their doom with fortitude and resignation under such circumstances." "Cease, you dastard, cease!" cried the lady, wringing her hands. "Be silent, or tell me what it is you want, so I may know the worst at once." "Quite so. I will not only be silent now, but I will be mute henceforth. Yea, I will be dumb forever that is, on certain conditions." "What conditions? Why can't you name them? Are they so infamous that even you shrink from telling me? In a word, what do you want?" "In a word, then, I want Odalite," coolly replied the colonel. The lady gazed at the man with eyes slowly dilating with horror. "Odalite!" she gasped, under her breath. "Yes, if you please. I hear that the girl is considered marriageable. I hear also a rumor to the effect that she may possibly be married to that young midshipman who is expected home at Christmas, unless I supplant him, which I hope to do, for she cannot care for him really, you know, since they parted when they were boy and child." "But she does care for him. She loves him as he loves her. They have always been devoted to each other," indignantly retorted Elfrida Force. The colonel laughed insolently. "Boy and girl love, puppy love, pigeon love! We will soon change all that." "If she did not care at all for Leonidas Force, still I know it is utterly impossible she should ever care for you." "I would make her love me, or pretend to do so." "Even if she were to become so deranged in mind, so demoralized in heart as to love you, I should never consent to such a monstrous marriage," passionately declared Elfrida Force. "Oh, yes, you would. You will when you realize that unless you do, your family peace and honor, your social position and prosperity, all you prize and pride yourself upon, must suddenly fall and bury you and yours under their ruins. Are you prepared to meet such a catastrophe? Indeed, to pull down destruction upon yourself, your husband, your daughters, all whom you love and cherish? Are you prepared to see your name blazoned all over the world as the subject of an unexampled scandal in high life? Are you prepared to see your husband and daughters die of who can foresee their fate? Are you willing that this discovery should wreck and destroy your home and your family, root and branch, and leave nothing of you but the memory of one dishonored name behind? Are you ready to incur all this irremediable woe and ruin? For be sure that in refusing me your daughter's hand you do incur it. Do you think, reckless knave as you are, do you think, even if I were so lost to every sense of honor and decency as to wish to sacrifice my dear daughter, that she would ever be persuaded to become your wife?" said the lady, and her voice sounded hollow from the depths of her distress. Oh, yes, certainly, when she hears, as she must hear, if necessary, all that depends upon her consent. She would die rather than be faithless to her betrothed. Possibly, supposing that she cares for him, which is doubtful under the circumstances, she might die rather than discard him; but do you not see that she would discard him rather than bring upon her family unutterable misery and degradation? Do you not see, ruthless fiend that you are, do you not know, even if I and my daughter were mad enough to favor your pretensions, that her father, who alone has the disposal of her hand, would never, never consent to forego his cherished plan of uniting his heiress with one of her own name, so that the family name may go down with the family estate to posterity, to give her to you, a stranger, an adventurer, for aught he knows? Most certainly he would, and he will, when he should believe, as he must be made to believe, that his dear daughter has ceased to care for that sailor whose very face she has almost forgotten, and that she has learned to love a certain gay and gallant soldier, has left the navy for the army, so to speak. And when he hears that her happiness, if you please, her happiness, depends upon her marriage with him, and so on, and so on. You know how to manage both father and daughter. I leave the matter entirely in your hands. But understand this: Odalite must be my wife before that young midshipman returns home to make trouble. And the marriage must be made to appear to everybody to be her own choice. You may give the girl as much or as little of your confidence as you see fit, only make her clearly comprehend the consequences of her refusal. When she accepts, as she must accept, my proposal, let her know and feel the absolute necessity of her seeming to wish the marriage, especially when in the presence of her father. You understand. It is useless to prolong a painful interview. I leave you to carry out my instructions," said the colonel, and, rising, with a low bow, he left the room. As soon as he was gone, the miserable woman started up from her seat, clasped her hands above her head, and walked wildly up and down the room, muttering to herself like any maniac: "Oh, wretch, 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 to stretch me upon such a rack! To put me to such straits! If it were not for Abel, if it were not for my dear, noble, generous husband, I could brave the worst for myself, and yes, even for my children. I could take them and go away into exile, poverty, obscurity. I could meet any fate for myself or for them rather than sacrifice my child to such a beast as Angus Anglesea. But I cannot see Abel's noble head bowed in grief and shame. I cannot! I cannot! So, if the Minotaur persists in demanding the maiden, she must be thrown to him. There is no deliverance. No deliverance. CHAPTER VII.